Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Called Together. And my guest today is David Bratcher. And I got to tell you, Dave is actually in Tennessee where I'm at, which I'm pretty excited about because everybody else has been in different places. And so it's like the Tennessee team all together. And so David is going to talk about Star Center. And I'm going to let him tell you all about that in a minute because it's just a good God thing. And if you were watching us on YouTube or Facebook or one of our websites, there's a banner going at the bottom of your screen. So some of you, as he is talking, it's just going to resonate with your heart. And you're like, I've got to contact him now. If you're watching, it's on your screen. We're going to have links in the description. If you're listening to us on podcast, it is also going to be in the show notes so that you can just connect with him. I'll have it up on my website at calledtogether.co. And also with that, if you're listening on podcasts, you can go watch it on YouTube as well. That's all I'm saying. So you can see the cool little box going along the bottom. That is just super cool. All right, Dave, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Renae.
Tell our folks a little bit about Star Center and what you guys do there and where you're located, because that is key. I've already told them Tennessee, but you can tell them a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my name's Dave Bratcher, and for the last 6 years, I've had the opportunity to serve as the president of the Star Center. And as Renae indicated, we are located about 80 miles outside of Memphis for geography purposes. We serve all of Western Tennessee. And, Renae, the beginning of the Star Center is an amazing journey. And it's a journey that I bet a lot of your audience can resonate with.
Yeah.
Because anybody that's had a child knows. I have one that is 12 and one that is 9. You know that you would move heaven and earth if it meant making a positive impact in the life of your child.
Yeah.
And so in the mid 80s, Chuck and Margaret Dumit, mom and a dad, had kiddos, and 2 of their children began to lose their eyesight. And in rural West Tennessee, there were no services. And so they searched high and low, and their search carried them all the way to the West Coast, to California, in about 87. And they found a company that was doing some very progressive things with technology. They did not want to move to California because they liked it here in West Tennessee. And so what they did is they leveraged the information and created a family support group in the basement of some borrowed space in a local elementary school. It was other moms and dads that had kiddos. Maybe it wasn't eyesight, maybe it was Downs, maybe it was CP, whatever the disability.
Yes.
But they were binding themselves together around a common challenge.
Yes.
And so that was the very beginning of the Star Center. And so I like to tell the story. George and Angela, those were the 2 kids' names. And by the way, they were later diagnosed with a condition called Batten's disease, which ultimately took their life. But George and Angela were the ones who provided the light.
Yeah.
It was their light that showed the direction into the darkness for services for kiddos just like them. And they're still providing that light to this very day. And so in 1988, we started with 2. That was George and that was Angela.
Yes.
This past year, we served over 3,500 individuals. And so we're continuing to follow the light provided by George and Angela.
Yeah.
And as believers, we know that we know where a source of light is. And ultimately, we are trying to remain faithful to showing up and providing hope.
And you know what I also love about this story is there's so many kingdom principles that were just happening in the natural, because, you have a need and yes, it will help you, but they could have said, okay, great. You know what, this is what our kids need. I guess we're just going to have to go to California and, we're just going to have to work on our kids. But instead, they're like, what could we do? There's others just like us. And so this unselfishness of saying, well, we're not the only ones, because sometimes it's very easy to, when life happens and, you have 2 kids with disabilities, you could say like, why is this happening to me? My kids don't deserve this. And it's easy to kind of get in this, I don't know, and just stay in a rough place. But instead they gave life, literally all these years later, that they're like, okay, this is what's happening, but this is not who our identity is. Like, this is a challenge, but who are we? And so you see them meeting in this basement with these other parents, to where it really is like this relational thing of let's do life together, because there's such value in that, which is just beautiful all in of itself. And then to see that all these years later, that other people have picked up the torch of that vision that started by them saying, we can do something about this. Like, there's nobody that can help us for what we need. And instead of just saying, why is no one helping us? They're like, let's figure this out. And how do we help others? Which is such a kingdom principle. Like, it is serving others, and God gives divine ideas. I am a firm believer in that. He's a problem solver in the natural, because he loves us on earth as well as he will when we're in heaven. And so now this torch of seeing people continue that vision, and I'll let you just speak into this, but I feel like sometimes people give up too soon.
Yeah. Well, it's so a couple things. First thing is, I am certain, and I don't know this, but I'm certain. I just got off the phone with Margaret Dumit, who is still on our board and very much supportive of what we're doing. But I bet there were moments that they asked, why us?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I bet there were
just
moments.
Natural. Yes. It's human.
Where there was a pity party that was happening.
Yes.
Right. And so I don't want anybody to be discouraged if that's where they are.
Absolutely.
Because that, I guarantee you, was part of their story, because of all the families that we've seen, we know it's a part of their story.
Yes.
The question is it going to be the end of your story?
Yes.
And the answer to that is no. And so finding hope in the darkness. I'll never forget a guy named, I believe, I'm going to try to get his name. I think his name is Chad Wright. He was a Marine, and he's written books, and he ran some ridiculous race, and all the things, right? But he talks about the hardest time, even in military preparation, is somewhere around 3 or 4 a.m. Because it's when it is the darkest. But if you'll just keep going, the sun always rises.
Yes.
Right? And so, and I love that picture, because any of us who have, if you've ever tried to stay awake all night, or you've tried to do a long run, or maybe you got a newborn at home and they won't go to sleep, and you're like, oh, if the sun would just come up, I would feel so much better.
Yes.
And so I just reminded when that parent gets the diagnosis of autism, or that parent gets the word that there is a genetic something is wrong genetically, and we don't know what we're going to do. That is likely that 3 or 4 a.m. moment. And obviously, what God's word always reminds us of is that He will never leave nor forsake us.
Yes.
There's not an asterisk on it. And I always tell folks at the Star Center, our mission is to help any person with any disability realize their potential. And I always say there's not an asterisk on that. It doesn't matter if there's a global pandemic. It doesn't matter if you can't pay. It doesn't matter, because it's unconditional.
Right. Yes.
Disability realize their potential. And we live that out each and every day. And the 120 plus team members we have, they all know what the mission is.
Yes.
It's crazy when you think about it, because every company has a mission, and it's likely hanging on the wall, but often the team doesn't know what it is. And so there's so many principles that, while we are not inherently a faith-based organization, talk to any of us and you will quickly learn that the light that we're shining is just a redirected light from
and I love, like, we are called to marketplace ministry, meaning serving in a secular marketplace, just as well as we are behind closed doors in churches. Do you know what I mean? And I'm always like, we need to get out of the church buildings, people. Like, it is not like a Sunday hat that we put on. It is a lifestyle of living for Jesus in whatever job that we have, in whatever way. And so I love what you guys are doing. My sister-in-law, who is passed now 12 years ago, but she was a quadriplegic from cerebral palsy. And so we just had a lot of great organizations in Pennsylvania where we lived at the time that did come in, but there weren't always enough. Yeah. There just wasn't enough. Anyway, so I love, just personally, obviously, what you guys are doing. So talk us through how people even find you. So they're walking in this, and maybe they are in that really tough season of, wow, this is a new diagnosis, or just, you know what I mean? Like they're just super overwhelmed. And they need community, they need connection, which is why I love what they did meeting at the elementary school. You know what I mean? Like, we have people that understand, because we can say we understand, but until the people that understand the best that are walking through similar, I mean, that's just, they can just understand it on a different level, I should say. So how do they find you? How do they know that Star Center's there?
It's a great question. You know, as a marketing major, one of the things I always heard after coming to the Star Center, and obviously I'd known about the Star Center most of my life, but people would say, well, Star Center is the best kept secret. And as a marketing major, I'm like, gosh, that's really disappointing.
You're like, this is insulting. This is so sad.
And so I think that is the challenge. But here's the reality, and it's just like when you go by. For example, I have a white 4Runner.
Yeah.
Well, until I bought a white 4Runner, I didn't realize how many other white 4Runners there were.
Right. Yes.
Right. Like it's an awareness thing. It's not a reality thing.
Yeah.
And the problem though is you don't know what you don't know until you need to know it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you realize you don't know it. And so we're trying to spread the mission through story. We have a bold goal for next year, and that's to tell 52 stories of people with disabilities who are either winning at school, winning at work, winning, living independently, because we believe that ultimately that is how we take it to the next level.
Yeah, there is power in people's stories. They're beautiful.
They are. Look at the greatest storyteller to ever live.
Yes, absolutely.
Jesus could have taught a whole bunch of different ways, and Jesus, for some reason, decided he was going to teach through the power of story.
We should probably learn from that.
We could spend all day trying to figure out why, or we could just go, you know what, I guess there's something to it. I'm going to do it. I was telling my dad just last week, I said, Dad, I got to learn how to play chess. And he said, well, why in the world would you learn how to play chess? I said, well, I don't know. All the smart people know how to play chess. So instead of figuring out why there's a connection, just go learn to play chess.
Right, exactly. You're like, there's got to be a benefit. I mean, I
don't know. But you know, when I think about marketing and I think about awareness, life change is really, at the end of the day, all that matters, and it's all anybody's going to remember. I mean, I could run through a bulleted list of all the services we provide and all that, and everybody's tuning out. They're turning off, and I would tune out too. Yeah. But if I told you about Stanton, who was a truck driver, and he'd been a truck driver his entire life, and then Stanton began to lose his eyesight. And he's 55 years old. Stanton has never done anything except drive a truck. Yeah. Stanton has a choice to make. He can either take his game of life and his little cars and his little people and his money and put them in the box and close the lid, or Stanton can really explore what those other gifts are that he has, put those in his little game of life car, and move forward. And so thankfully, Stanton walked through our doors. And I don't know that I've ever seen a human being more deflated than Stanton was when he first came in. And I'll never forget, he said, where are all the other blind people? And we said, well, Stanton, there's lots of people who have vision loss. And we've got all these people standing around him. Literally, there's like 4 or 5 people standing around him literally in this moment.
Yes.
And he believes he is on an island all by himself. Yeah. And so when we rallied around him, we could see things in him long before he could see them in him. And so as he grew in training, as he grew in knowledge, as he grew in confidence in moving independently, he began to hold his head just a little bit higher. And then he goes for a job interview. Again, lifelong truck driver. He can't do that anymore. Goes for a job interview, gets hired. Obviously, he's super excited. The day after the interview, I'm walking into the office. He's sitting on a bench outside, and he said, he's blind. And so I said, "Hey, good morning, Stan. This is Dave." Stan said, "Dave, I just want you to know you've got a real success story in me." See, he was now able to see himself the way we saw him months earlier. And so you take the secular, you move into, right, the spiritual, and you say, gosh, this sounds a lot like the way Jesus interacted with you, right? Because Jesus saw not what they were currently doing, but what they were going to do or what they had the potential to do, right? He didn't bet on the past. He bet on the potential.
Yes.
And thank God he did, because look at the Apostle Paul.
Right. Absolutely. And what I also love in just sharing Stanton's story as well is that this whole thing of being able to serve people emotionally where they're at, because that's a real thing. And so when somebody gets a diagnosis like that, and it is a system of grief. I mean, they have to go through a grieving process, just like a death, because it's death of expectations. It's the death of life as we know it. And I think that sometimes people don't value the process with people, that this is so normal to go through these steps. But like what you said, are you going to stay there, or, are you going to go through the process and get in your life car? And I think that's where Star Center, why it's so amazing, is that they get to connect, because it's easy to think you're the only one. You know what I mean? And we've all done that in areas of our life where like nobody gets it, or you feel like you're the only one that just can't, handle this whole parenting thing like everybody else. I mean, the list is long, whatever it is in life, that it's so easy to get like that. And then when you get community, there's like this beautiful encouragement that starts to happen. And it's like, wait, we're still us. Our identity isn't driving truck. Our identity isn't even our eyesight. Do you know what I mean? But there's like this little transition that has to happen to say like, no, you are still you, and you have so much to offer other people. So I love his story. And so give me some examples of just the types of services. Are there groups that people can join? Is there, what type of people, I guess I should say, what type of services that people are looking for? Would they say, oh, Star Center, I need to reach out to them?
Yeah. So one of the things, and Renae, you'll appreciate this, just from a business perspective, we drew ourselves a box. The top of the box was Kentucky. The bottom of the box was Mississippi. The left side of the box was the Mississippi River, and the right side of the box was the Tennessee River. And we said, we're only going to serve people inside that box.
Right.
And so I started asking, well, how did we come up with this box? And there's no real good answer.
Right. It just seemed logical at the time.
Yeah, we had to start somewhere. But I'm going, gosh, it's 2020. We have lots of technology, and COVID-19 has proven that we have an amazing way to connect with people that aren't right here in West Tennessee. And so that's where we are now. We're really pushing the envelope, trying to rethink how we're going to deliver services and have an impact. Because let me say this: rural West Tennessee is not any different than rural Kentucky or rural Oklahoma or rural Alaska. Or the fact is, there's not enough people in a close proximity to warrant having a lot of employees all the time there, right? So, one of the things, and I spent some time in Oklahoma, and we can get to that story of how I got back to Tennessee if you want to. It's one of those.
I love hearing God's stories of how He puts us where we're supposed to be.
Well, it's a great one. But what I was going to say about Oklahoma is when I was out there, and that was in 2009, 2010. They had a great problem with getting physicians into rural Oklahoma.
Okay.
For the same reason, because it just didn't make sense. And so we lived down the street from some folks, and one of them was a resident. And so he was going and doing resident training in a rural clinic 2 days per week, and there was a physician that was going with him.
Yeah.
And so that was their model. And they had to pay him a lot of money, but there was really no other way to get services to them. And so, so that's what we're trying to do, because right now, if you live in West Tennessee, we can provide services. And so, we've got a contract with the state vocational rehabilitation department. And so that's one of the ways that we get people as far as connected with us. We're also doing music therapy in schools, doing music therapy in substance abuse places. And so, but let me talk about Oklahoma for a second, because it's a great, God's got a sense of humor. My wife and I over lunch today were just talking about one of the God moments. So I go out to Oklahoma with a buddy to sell crane and rigging services. And after getting out there, I get this crazy job offer. I mean, crazy. Money was nuts. The benefits were even crazier. And so I tell my friend, I'm like, hey, love you, but I can't pass this up. So go to work. And very soon after going to work, find out my wife's pregnant with our second child. And so she's staying at home with the first and now pregnant with the second. And so 5 months in, I hear the words, "You're fired." And that was one of those moments, right? Well, I driven a company car to the office that day, so I had an opportunity to be reminded of that. Wait, I'm going to have to call my wife, who's got our almost 3-year-old daughter at home with her, so that she and my daughter, also pregnant with our second child, can come pick me up from work because I was escorted from the building.
Right. With the news that you no longer have a job, like, hey, honey, can you come pick me up? And by the way, It was
an amazing moment. So that was on a Tuesday. No, that was on a Tuesday. Yes, that was on a Tuesday. So there was already an activity. So I was a part of a men's Bible study at St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Oklahoma City that met every Thursday. Yeah. Well, they were just about to open a new Christian Life Center, and there was an 18-wheeler showing up on Wednesday morning to unload like 500 chairs. And so the men's Bible study group, right, was signed up to do that. And so I look at my calendar. I'm like, well, I'm fired on Tuesday. I'm like, what am I going to do tomorrow morning? Oh, I've already got something to do. Yes. I'm going to go unload chairs, so I have a reason to get up. And then the weekly Bible study happened on Thursday, right? So you're starting to see this safety net.
Yes.
That was already deployed. And I'll never forget, get around to prayer request Thursday morning, and I told him what had happened. And a guy cut me off, and he said, hey, there was about 25 men in the room. He said, how many of you ever been fired, let go, whatever? Everybody but one raised their hand. And in that moment, right, it was a Stanton moment. I thought I was the only one.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
And in that moment, it's like everybody except one, he was younger than me. Yeah. And I thought, okay, all right, then, hey, I can do this. This is not the scarlet letter. This is not.
Right. This is not this embarrassment, new identity or failure identity that's so easy to take on.
Right. And so we transitioned back to Jackson and find a job, find a house, all of it. I mean, just thing after thing after thing after thing fell in place. But the commitment, though, in that moment was, if I can help somebody else going through that journey where they're unemployed, they're without hope, and then fast forward, I guess 4 years after moving back to Jackson to this job where I am now, where we have all these unemployed people, and we're helping train them, we're helping find them jobs, we're helping encourage them. It's an amazing thing. And one other little story about this. Is this idea of not knowing what you don't know. So I get a phone call on a Friday night about the Star Center. It says, hey, I don't know if you know, they're looking for an executive director. And I said, yeah, I did. And I'm really not interested. That was my answer.
Thanks for thinking of me.
That was literally my answer. And so I call a friend who's a mentor to me, and I just shared that with him. And he said, Dave, if you didn't have enough information to say yes, how did you have enough information to say no?
Oh, is that wise? That is some
And
good words right there.
I don't really know what to say to that other than you got me. You're
Oh,
exactly
right.
right.
Yes.
So I call her back and I say, hey, look, this is the biggest small town in America. I'm going to submit my resume. I'm not telling a soul. I'm not politicking. I don't care who's on the board. If it's supposed to be, it's going to be. And here I am.
And the rest is history, as they say. Listen, that also really talks about so much of your story about, also the power of influence and a mentor that doesn't tell you what you want to hear, but tells you what you need to think about. You know what I mean? Which is beautiful, which is absolutely beautiful.
It was exactly the right time from exactly the right voice. And it had a lifelong, forever impact. He's a believer, a deacon at Bellevue Baptist Church in Memphis. He's the CEO of Love Worth Finding, which is Adrian Rogers' ministry. He is. I remind him of him being part of my story.
Right. And we are meant to be part of other people's stories of encouraging them. Do you know what I mean? Like so many times we think, well, we're going to pray, God send us answers, but God works through his people. Like we have to be obedient in reflecting who he is, which is real life conversations, encouraging stories. Sometimes we miss that. And it's the beauty part that God allows us to see.
That's exactly right.
God is God. He could have brought us to salvation any way he chose to through blood. Do you know what I mean? He could have had the body of Christ operate any way that he wanted to. He could have done the Great Commission any way he wanted to. It could have been like, I'm going to send an angel down every day to you. But he's like, no. Next to salvation, this is my personal opinion, the Great Commission and sharing who Jesus is like our second best gift to salvation, because we get to see what God sees. We get to see lives change. We get to just encourage people, even if they reject it at that moment. But we're like, I see potential in you. Like, you just don't know what God sees in you yet. And so I'm always like, everybody's made in God's image. They just don't know it yet.
That's
so
exactly right.
What we get to do is just say, you are amazing. Why? Well, because God made you, whether you realize it or not, but he made you amazing. Anyway, what were you going to say? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was just going to say, I've often asked, especially not to say that there's any politics or any weird things that happen within a church, but in the event that they did ever happen within a church, I always come back to this question of, wow, I mean, Jesus had so many ways to carry on his ministry. And why in the world it's a cobbled together group of sinners, I will never know. Because again, that's so far from perfect. But he knew that and he did it anyway. Just like while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us, right? Which also is mind-boggling.
It is. Talk about seeing our potential, that he's like, it is worth the sacrifice of Jesus, like, because you are that loved and I see what you are meant to be. Right. That is humbling. And like, it's almost hard to wrap your brain around some days. Like that type of grace and love is, only God. Do you know what I mean?
That's
like
right.
It's a God kind of love that we have a hard time in our humanity sometimes wrapping our brains around, which is just beautiful. What type of daily, like if somebody walked into Star Center for the day, what type of activities do they see going around them? So the people that you have served, over the last year, say, do they all come to where you're at?
No.
Okay.
No. And even pre-COVID, they were not always coming here. Some of the times the largest barrier that somebody has is transportation. And so because we're in the barrier reducing business, if it's easier for us to go see them where they are or somewhere closer to their home, then that's what we're going to do. Okay. And we're doing more and more away from the building than we once did. Okay. And I'm not saying it's good or better. I'm just saying it's different. Yeah. The services to those with disabilities has evolved over time. In our state, Renae, it took a lawsuit to basically shut down institutions in which they were only there to house people with disabilities, right? And so it's like, oh, you have severe disabilities, we're going to put you in a home, basically. And, whatever happens, right?
Yes.
And it was, I'm not saying people did it on purpose because they knew better. I'm saying people didn't know better yet.
Right. Yes. They were trying to fix a problem or a need. Yeah. And it's just the best that they knew what to do at that time.
That's right. And because our society and we as humans are so resistant to change, it was just easier to keep doing what we were doing. Well, then there was a lawsuit that said, wait a minute, we need to treat them as individuals that with dignity. And maybe we need to talk to them about what they might want to do instead of determining what they wanted to do for them. And so then it shifted into more of a group home sheltered workshop environment in which you allowed people with disabilities to work. The problem with that is they were only working with other people with disabilities. It wasn't integrated.
Yes.
So now we're at the next step in which really the way that we are judged on how successful was it, the question is going to be asked, are there other people without known disabilities working next to them or not?
Yes.
And so again, trying to mainstream people that are different, because I mean, how egotistical is it to believe that only they're the people that are different?
Right. Exactly. It's like
Renae, you're different. You're different too.
Yes.
Right? Matter of fact, when we look at our fingerprint, we remind ourselves that God made us different than anybody else. And for those of us who know God and appreciate God, we know that wasn't by accident.
Right.
It was on purpose. And yet the older we get and the more educated, the more informed and the more enlightened, the more we're trying to cram everybody into the same box.
Yes.
You go, oh, well, those people don't fit. Well, maybe your box is the wrong size.
Right. It's like maybe your boxes aren't fitting. I feel like I've been on this checkbox kick now. Whether it is inside our local churches, having to serve, well, here's your sign up form, here's your checkbox. I'm like, maybe God doesn't the way he's using you is not in those ministry checkboxes that we want to say, well, this is how we do things. Even with, parenting our kids, do we put these checkboxes of I need you and your sister each to be XYZ, but God made them with unique gifts to serve different people. You know what I mean? And so we do this whole checkbox thing. And I'm thinking, Jesus he got rid of checkboxes like nobody's business. He nowhere on any form that anybody would have given him in, the digital church sign up form which is your spiritual gift, let me tell you what ministry you can serve in. Do you know what I mean? Like he had no earthly title, none. Right. And you just see how he loved people, how he shared stories. And so I love what you're saying. Like the check boxes are, it's not that, what's the answer to that question? It's you're asking the wrong questions.
Right.
And it's like we're asking the wrong questions.
so here we go, right? We go plant this church at Galatia, and what do the Galatians begin doing very quickly?
Yes.
Man, let's bring the checklist back.
Yes. I mean, the Judaizers were all over it. They're like, excuse me, this is our 101 class for our church here in the churches of Galatia. Have you been circumcised? Yes. Right. Well, if not, we have a class about that, and you need to do that.
Right. No, it's exactly right. And the challenge, it's often Christianity is not neat. It doesn't, you can't reduce it to a checklist, and it makes it hard to appreciate because it truly does begin with a gift that you didn't earn, and nothing you can do is ever going to earn it. And that's hard, especially for us in the West who believe that we want to earn our way and earn our keep and all those things. And this is a gift that can't be earned.
Yeah, we're actually studying Galatians in our community women's Bible study. And, every time that, doing one of Paul's letters or teaching on it, I'm always like, wow, I would love for him to, what his letter would be to the Western church.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, what would it be? We all know it would start with grace and peace and reminding us where our hope comes from, because he always reroutes to the heart of God, and gets, everybody on with Jesus, God's grace and peace on this. And then he would have to say, don't let me come over there. Do you know what I mean? Like, in one of his letters, he's like, you need to get this fixed before I show up. And I do. Do you know what I mean? I feel like he would have a really long letter, or maybe it would be super short of like, do you know what I mean? Like, get rid of your idols that you have set up, and your check boxes, which are your idols. And I just think that, and that kind of bleeds out though, into society. Exactly what you're saying about even with people with disability, asking the wrong questions, like, well, what is a win? Oh, well, they have housing. And they're, and we can say we took care of them. Do you know what I mean? And we just kind of stop there. But then when growth happens, but are they actually being valued?
Right.
Is there value? So I love what you said of what your win is are they being able to operate in society, so to speak, with people that don't have disabilities, because that is truly the heart of God.
It is.
He does not put us in like little corrals of like, okay, you're here, you're here, you're here. Like, that is not what heaven's going to be like, folks.
It's not. And when you boil it all down, we all have, like, we're here for a reason. Mm-hmm. And people with disabilities are here for a reason too. I'll never forget hearing from a mom of a 22-year-old who looked at her and said, Mom, why did nobody ever ask me what my hopes and dreams were?
Right.
And so often we talk around people with disabilities. We talk over them. We act like they're not human. Mm-hmm. And what we miss is their input.
Yeah, because it's beautiful.
It is. And Renae, so many of us, whether we have a disability or we don't, we've, at some point in our life, we've tried to live out the hopes and dreams that somebody put on us.
Yes. Yeah.
That did not come from inside of us.
Yep.
And here's what I know. It doesn't work, and it's painful.
Yes. And that is actually, the definition of tragedy.
Yes.
Really. I mean, that is, if I had to just say, well, that is the tragic part of what that is. So how can, if people go to your website at star-center.org, and again, if you're watching this, it's on the bottom of your screen. It will be in the description on the YouTube channel and in the show notes of the podcast. But if they go to that website, what are they going to find when they get there? How can they stay connected with what you guys are doing? So it may be somebody watching this that says, hey, myself or my family member, we could use your services. Or it could be someone saying, oh, we would like to serve alongside of you or financially support what you're doing.
Yeah.
What else can they find at your website?
Yeah. So the webpage is going to give you kind of a high-level overview of kind of 6 core service areas: assistive technology, employment services, music therapy, what we call vision services, which are often delivered by an orientation and mobility specialist. And then we have speech services, and we have home care. Which was, again, really born out of a place that, depending on the severity of the disability, there were very few options of staying in your own home versus moving into somebody else's home, which is why that started, right? So that's kind of an overview of services. And then as it relates to the donor side, there's a donate button, and it's super simple. Okay. We are obviously a 501c3, but we do lots of fundraising. There's a way to sign up for our mailing list, in which we're staying connected with our donors and those that support us in telling success stories like Stanton's and so many others that come through the door. So it's really a good landing page. The other thing is our Facebook page. That's where, That's our largest social platform. I think there's about 7,600 folks that are connected with us there. And we're posting 3 or 4 times a week there, often success stories, videos, stuff like that.
Okay, and we'll make sure that we put that in all the notes everywhere with links so that people can connect with you that way. So, and I don't know the answer to this, so this really is on the fly type question. But if they don't fit the first 2 categories, or maybe they do, but the third category would be if somebody says, I love the vision of what you're doing, and I would like to give of my time.
Yeah.
Is there ways for people to volunteer either on site or be a type of mentor, like off site? I mean, what are the ways that people can connect their time with what you're doing?
Yeah. So one of the good things and bad things about the work that we do is everybody here that's serving clients directly has received some level of specific training, whether it's through bachelor's degrees or through postgraduate work.
Sure.
And so we're not a very volunteer friendly place.
Sure.
We love volunteers. So we basically,
but it just looks different than when someone's like, hey, can I come on site and do X, Y, Z? The need for it's just different. So I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say for events, obviously we need volunteers. And if there's somebody that's watching or listening that doesn't live anywhere close to us, and they go, I don't have any idea where to start to find disability service connections where I am.
Okay.
I need to reach out.
Okay, I love it.
We know the alphabet soup. We know the places to look to find people that look like us in other states.
Yes.
And so we want to do anything that we can to connect them with folks that can help them.
I love it. I love it because I feel like those are the 3 categories that people's brains go to. Hey, I could use those services, or somebody that I care about could. I'd like to financially partner, or how can I just give of time? But I love for those that live close enough, when you're doing your fundraisers and you're doing events like that you could use those volunteers.
Absolutely.
And that type of thing that they can connect with you. Well, Dave, I have to tell you, I'm excited to actually I will be one of those people today actually that will be going to sign up because I want to make sure that I stay on your list. Also, it just helps too, those that are you listening, getting on these lists, even if you're like, you know what, I don't have someone in my life that's close to there that can use those services, and I give to other places. I'm not going to waste their time of going on their list. Okay, the biggest way that you can obviously serve is get on that list and say, how can I pray and support what is happening? Dave and his team is not going to be upset if you get on their email list. If you don't know how that works, we do one email to communicate. So it doesn't matter if it's 10 people or 10,000 people. Because here's the thing, if this is just hit your heart and you're like, I love what they're doing, you don't know when God is going to use that when you're going to meet someone that is saying, I'm all alone. This is what just diagnosis happened. And you're like, hey, there's someone that here is their website. Let me connect you. I love what they're doing. And so don't think that it has to impact you personally right now. Who doesn't want to hear stories like Stanton's story? Like your life is just enriched by their story. So I just want to encourage you, don't let that keep you from connecting with what Star Center is doing. All right, Dave, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And
Thank
folks,
you, Renae.
Go to star-center.org, and we love what you're doing. All right, until next time, my friends, we will be back with a new Table Talk and with a new guest that you will be able to just hear how God is using them in their sphere of influence. So keep leading well, my friends.